All right, so today we're going to dive into a case that really just captivated New York City back in 1986.
Absolutely.
And it became just synonymous with this specific time and place,
Yeah.
a world of privilege, exclusivity, and this whole social scene that everyone called Preppy. We're
hmm
talking about the murder of Jennifer Levin and the trial of Robert Chambers. It really exposed this dark side to that seemingly glamorous world.
Yeah, it wasn't just about the crime itself, though, was it? This case, became a media spectacle,
Yeah.
and it showed how powerful public perception is and how easily it can be swayed. You
Oh,
know?
totally. And for this deep dive, we are looking at the tragic case of Robert Chambers, the Preppy murderer.
Okay.
An article from Investera, but we're not just going to rehash the facts. We want to go deeper. Like, how did this media frenzy
Right.
shape the narrative? What were the legal strategies? And, how did this impact how society views privilege, justice, and victim blaming?
It's a story that still resonates today.
It does.
It makes you ask how far we've come or haven't in terms of addressing these issues.
Exactly. So let's go back to August 25th, 1986.
Okay.
Picture Dorian's Red Hand, a super trendy bar in Manhattan.
Yeah.
It was like the center of the preppy scene.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Pop to collars.
yeah, popped collars, designer labels, an air of exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Robert Chambers and Jennifer Levin crossed paths.
Right.
Both young, both seemingly part of this privileged world.
And Preppy, though, it was more than just fashion.
Right.
It represented a certain social group in 1980s New York,
Okay.
usually associated with rich families, elite
Yes.
schools,
Yeah.
and this, sense of entitlement and that context is really important for understanding what happened and how people saw it.
Totally. So now, in the wee hours of the morning, Chambers and Levin, they leave the bar together.
Okay.
They head to Central Park. And remember, this is the 80s,
Right.
when Central Park, especially at night, had a reputation.
Oh, yeah, it was not a safe place,
No, not at all.
especially at night.
The park itself, it's almost like this, backdrop to the story.
Right. A very symbolic backdrop.
Yeah, it adds this layer of vulnerability and almost foreshadows what's about to happen.
Exactly. And then early that morning, a cyclist
Yeah.
makes a horrific discovery.
Yeah.
Jennifer Levin's body found under a tree.
It's just this stark, brutal image that instantly, grabs the city's attention.
Yeah, it puts the spotlight on Robert Chambers.
Mm.
Initially as a witness,
Hmm.
the police question him about Jennifer's whereabouts,
Right.
but there's something that's off immediately.
Yeah.
He has these fresh, bloody scratches all over his face.
Oh, wow.
And his explanation, his cat scratched him.
A cat. Really?
That's what he said.
Even back then, that must have sounded pretty flimsy.
Oh, yeah, major turning point in the investigation.
Right.
Chambers goes from witness to prime suspect.
Wow, and then comes the confession.
Yeah, he admits to killing Jennifer,
Okay.
but his version of events is very, very specific.
Okay.
He claims it was an accident during rough sex that Jennifer initiated.
Okay, so this is where the legal strategy gets interesting.
It does.
So the rough sex defense, was this a common tactic back then? And was it a way to, deflect blame and put the responsibility on Jennifer Levin?
So the rough sex defense wasn't completely new,
Okay.
but using it in this case,
Mm,
it caused outrage and a lot of debate.
I bet.
It really tapped into those societal anxieties about female sexuality.
Especially in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, especially in the 80s.
Yeah.
It essentially put Jennifer on trial,
Wow.
made her character and choices the focus.
And it seemed to work, at least at first.
Yeah, public opinion started to shift.
Right.
Doubts about Jennifer were planted, and the media ran with it.
But then a different story started to emerge.
That's right, one that contradicted Chambers' narrative.
Okay.
Prosecutor Linda Fairstein and Jennifer's family that disagreed with Chambers completely.
Yeah.
They argued that the evidence told a different story,
What was that?
one of violent struggle, not
Yeah.
some consensual encounter gone wrong.
So that's where the cracks in Chambers' story start to show.
Yeah, the injuries on Jennifer's body, they were brutal.
Right.
They didn't match up with his claims of accidental death during rough sex.
So it became this battle of narratives.
Exactly, Chambers' self-defense claim versus the reality of Jennifer's injury.
And the media went crazy.
Oh, yeah, it went into overdrive.
It wasn't just about the crime anymore.
It became a spectacle,
Yeah.
fueled by the whole social scene of 1980s New York.
Yeah.
The preppy image, the money, the whispers of these wild parties, it all became part of the media frenzy.
And then, boom, a video surfaced.
Right.
Showing Chambers mocking Jennifer's death
Oh, yeah.
at a party while he was out on bail.
It was a huge blow to his image.
Oh, I bet this callous act, fueled public outrage.
Absolutely.
And it shattered his golden boy image.
That video was pivotal.
Yeah.
It showed this arrogance and disregard for what happened.
Right.
It really stuck with the public.
It makes you think, how much did that video actually affect the trial?
Well, the trial began, and Chambers' defense team,
Yeah.
they doubled down,
On what?
still painting Jennifer as the aggressor,
Oh, wow.
trying to make this defense work, even though it didn't fit the evidence.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
It really makes you question their ethics.
Yeah.
Using victim blaming like that,
Right.
how much do societal biases affect trials?
Yeah.
Did they believe their client, or were they just manipulating the system and public opinion?
Tough questions.
And the verdict:
Yeah, what was it?
manslaughter, not murder.
Wow.
Sentenced to 15 years.
That must have caused some controversy.
It sparked outrage and a lot of debate.
I can imagine.
People felt like manslaughter in 15 years didn't reflect the fact that a life was taken.
Regardless of intent.
Exactly. It raised questions about whether privilege played a role.
Yeah, and what happened after?
Chambers served his time, became known as the Preppy killer,
Right.
and was released in 2003.
But the story doesn't end there, right?
No, Jennifer's family continued to grieve,
Of course.
their daughter's memory tarnished by what the defense did.
It's a reminder that even though legal proceedings end,
Yeah.
the emotional and social consequences can last for years.
Decades even.
This case, it really left its mark.
It did.
Not just on those involved.
But on how society understands justice, privilege, and accountability.
This case, it became a symbol of so much more than just a crime.
It did.
It exposed this dark side to this seemingly glamorous world.
Right.
Made us confront these uncomfortable truths about class privilege and perception.
And it raised questions we're still dealing with today.
Yeah, we need to look closer at these issues.
Absolutely.
Explore the lasting impact of this case and what it tells us about then and now.
We'll do that after a quick break, so stay tuned. Welcome back.
We've been going through this, really complex and honestly disturbing case.
Yeah.
The murder of Jennifer Levin and then, the trial of Robert Chambers.
A case that just keeps resonating decades later.
I know, right? And for good reason.
Yeah, it touches on so many issues that are still relevant today.
Exactly.
We can't just ignore them.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what does it all mean for us now?
Right.
All these years later. What are some key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives?
To understand the world better.
Yeah.
Well, for me, one of the biggest takeaways is you got to think critically. We can't just absorb whatever we're told,
Right.
whether it's the media,
Yeah.
the courts.
For even our friends.
Yeah, even our friends.
Exactly.
We got to question things,
Mhm.
look for real evidence,
Right.
and be willing to challenge our own ideas.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hype.
Oh, especially with a case like this.
I know, right?
It was everywhere.
Yeah, but, as we've seen, there's often a lot more to the story,
Yeah.
than what's on the surface.
Right. The truth is never simple.
No, it's not black and white at all.
And that's why it's so important to see things from different angles.
Yeah. Seek out different viewpoints. Understand how power dynamics shape the narratives we hear,
Right.
and recognize whose voices are amplified and whose are silenced.
It's like this case is a reminder that public perception,
Yeah.
it's so easily manipulated.
It really is.
We have to be careful about the information we take in.
Yeah, be aware of the biases
Mm-hmm.
and approach things with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Like, don't just believe everything you hear. It
Mhm.
also shows how important it is to, stand up for justice.
Absolutely.
To speak out against victim blaming, support survivors, and push for a legal system that is fair
Yeah, truly fair and equitable for everyone.
for everyone, not just those who can afford it or,
Correct.
have the right connections.
Right, a system that isn't swayed by money or social status.
Or by, carefully crafted stories.
Exactly. And these principles, they go beyond big cases like this.
They do.
It's about how we treat each other in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Are we really listening to each other?
Mhm.
Are we questioning our own biases? It's tough, but important.
It is.
Are we holding ourselves accountable for what we say and do?
That's the key.
This case, it's obviously a tragedy,
Yeah.
but it can also push us to make positive changes.
It can.
To be more aware, more empathetic, and more involved in creating a society that really values truth.
Truth, justice, and accountability.
Exactly.
Now, if you want to learn more about this case
Yeah.
and what it all means,
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of stuff out there. Books, documentaries, articles.
It's a real rabbit hole.
It is.
And it's not just about the true crime aspect.
It's about what it tells us about ourselves and the world we live in.
It makes us ask tough questions.
It does.
With our own beliefs.
Our biases.
And how we contribute to, the bigger picture.
Exactly. And this conversation, it doesn't stop here.
It doesn't.
This is just the beginning.
Right. It's a starting point.
Yeah. A jumping off point.
For deeper thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Analysis and hopefully action.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.
That's the legacy Jennifer deserves.
It is.
And it's the world we should all want to live in.
We're back. And, we've really been digging into this case.
Yeah.
The murder of Jennifer Levin and the trial of Robert Chambers.
It's a case that just won't go away.
It won't, and for good reason.
Yeah, it brings up so many issues we're still dealing with.
Exactly. So as we wrap this up, what does it all mean? What can we take away from all of this?
Well, I think the big thing is don't just accept what you hear,
Right.
We have to think critically, whether it's the media, the courts, or even our own friends.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype.
Especially with a case like this.
But as we've seen, there's always more to the story.
Exactly. The truth is rarely simple.
It's messy.
It is, and that's why it's so important to see things from different sides.
Yeah.
Get different perspectives, understand, how power dynamics shape the stories we hear.
Right.
And, who gets to speak and who gets silenced.
It's like this case is a big warning sign. Public perception, it's fragile,
Yeah, that's so easily manipulated.
We have to be careful with the information we consume.
Be aware of the biases, think critically,
Don't just believe everything you hear.
Right, question everything.
And we have a responsibility to, fight for justice.
Absolutely.
Speak out against victim-blaming support survivors.
Push for a fair legal system for everybody.
Yeah, one that isn't swayed by money or social status or, those carefully crafted stories.
That's right.
These principles, they go beyond this one case, though.
They do.
It's about how we treat each other every day.
Exactly. Are we listening to each other? Are we questioning our own biases?
It's tough.
It is, but it's important.
Are we holding ourselves accountable?
That's what matters.
This case, it was a tragedy.
It was.
But it can also inspire us to do better.
It can.
To be more aware, more understanding, and, more involved in building a society that values truth and justice.
And holds people accountable.
Exactly. And if anyone wants to learn more...
There's so much out there.
Yeah, books, documentaries, articles.
It's worth exploring.
It really is. And not just for the, the true crime element.
It's about what it teaches us about ourselves.
Yeah.
About the world we live in.
It makes us ask those tough questions.
It does.
About what we believe.
About our own biases.
And how we fit into, the big picture.
The conversation doesn't end here.
No, it doesn't.
This is just the start.
A jumping off point.
For deeper thinking, for action.
So keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.
That's what Jennifer deserves.
And that's the kind of world we should all want.